Hello everyone, Cindy here with Monarch Mom DIY. Back today with a compilation video of my Christmas DIYs from this past week. Today we're going to make these cute little double pocket treat holders using some 6x6 scrapbook paper, some ribbon, and a bone folder. So here you can see my paper is 6 inches by 6 inches. It is a double-sided scrapbook paper. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to fold one piece corner to corner. Get it nice and straight, lined up as straight as you can. Check both sides, and then I am going to burnish that down with my bone folder, making sure I have a nice crease there. Then taking that folded edge and putting it against the left side of your scoreboard, you're going to score at 3/4 of an inch on that longest side there. Then turn it so that that folded side is against the top, and you're going to score at 3 inches on that corner there. Then I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side, scoring at 3 inches. And that is all the scoring we're going to do, so you can put your scoreboard away. And now we're going to open it up and we're going to fold on those 2 score lines we made at 3 inches. So you're going to fold that over on that score line, burnish it down really well, and then do the other one on the other side. Now you'll notice that there's a little bit of the tip of the side there. We're going to cut that off just on the one that's going to be folded on the inside. So just trim a little of that off, then go ahead and fold the other one over. Then that little tip, I'm just going to fold it around and then tuck it under. It's fine. It doesn't need to be cut, and then it's got a nice clean edge there. So this is what you have. Now there are 3 score lines here. There's a middle one and then one above and one below. We are going to fold on that middle one, lining up the 2 halves here of our, I guess it's a little house shape at this point. And again, make sure everything's flat. Then you're going to fold back on the other 2 score lines. So here you can see this is going to be one of our pockets. And then this one is going to be our other little pocket that will hold a mini Ghirardelli chocolate. Again, you can see I'm folding and burnishing down really well. You can see you should have that little W, and that's what's going to allow this to sit. Now, holding your 2 triangles together, you can punch a hole either with a crocodile or just with a regular hole punch. And this is how we're going to put our ribbon in to tie our bow that's going to hold our treat holder together. Now, I am using, I believe, 1/4 inch. You put it through and wrap it around again to the hole, and that's going to be how long you need for one side. So then take that up and cut that much again. This should give you plenty of ribbon to tie a nice bow. It will need to be kind of off to the side because of the point at the top of the treat holder. Once you've got your bow the size you want it, go ahead and trim up the tails of the end of the ribbon. So like I said, these pockets are the perfect size to hold these mini Ghirardelli chocolates. You can just slide one in either of the pockets, and then the weight of that is also what's going to allow this little treat holder to stand up. And here are a few of the finished ones. You also could punch a little tag shape and stick it in one of your pockets to be able to write a little note to your recipient. Today we're making these super cute mini pallet snowmen using these mini pallets and tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, as well as a little bit of florals and some jingle bells and twine. So for each of my mini pallets, I need 4 tumbling tower blocks. These are going to be the brims of the snowmen's hats. So you can use the unpainted or the brown. I am painting them black on all of the sides except for this back side that is taped down that will be glued to the pallets. Then taking our mini pallets, we're going to use that same black paint and we are going to paint the top of each little plank on the pallet here to be the top of the snowman's hats. And I'm also painting black the spaces between the snowman's hats on the planks as well. Then we'll paint the rest of the mini pallets with white. These will be the snowman's bodies. Next, taking some more white paint on this chippy brush and dabbing it on the paper towel, I'm just going to add some white streaks, dry brush technique on the snowman's hats and also on the tumbling tower blocks. Next, I'm going to take this black fine point paint marker and draw the eyes on my snowman. Now, you're going to see here in a minute when I start gluing on the hat brims that it might have been a better idea to wait until after the hats were glued on before I did the eyes. But either way, you're going to leave a little bit of space and then draw 2 eyes for each of your snowmen. And next we'll add our little carrot noses with an orange paint marker as well. Next, using a little bit of hot glue, we're going to glue the tumbling tower blocks down to be the brims of the hats. This is where you're going to see they're going to cover some of the faces of snowmen on either side. So like I said, you could glue these on and then draw the faces on. That might be easier. But either way, I think it's super cute. Then taking our same black paint marker, we're just going to add 3 circle buttons on each of our snowmen. To add a little bit of texture and decoration at the bottom of our palette, I'm going to wrap some jute twine around 3 times and then knot it in the front. Next, I'm going to hot glue some tiny little pieces of a greenery, Christmas greenery from Walmart to some of the hats. I'm also going to add a few jingle bells to the snowman's hats as well. Lastly, I'm going to take a little bit of white puffy paint and add some snow looking drips to the tops of the snowman's hats as well as the brims of their hats. I think this is a really cute addition. You could just do this with regular paint, but I think with the puffy paint, it makes it look a little more three-dimensional. And here are the finished mini palette snowmen. I think they're so cute with just few supplies. This would be a fun project to make with kids as well, or to make with some girlfriends. Today we're making this cute rustic Christmas tree out of tumbling tower blocks, a chunky circle from Dollar Tree, a star, and some jingle bell garland, and some paint. So to make the tree that I am making, you will need 66 tumbling tower blocks. Now, if you're going to do yours brown, or you don't mind having some of them the natural and some of them the brown, you can use just one box of tumbling tower blocks. The ones in my store come with 72. However, I chose to get 2 boxes and just pull out 66 of the natural colored blocks. Now you can see I am painting the fronts and backs of all 66 of my blocks with fern green. I'm just going to do a traditional colored Christmas tree. You might choose to use the dark brown ones and make a dark brown tree. You could paint them white. You can paint them whatever color you would like. I'm just going to paint the fronts and backs right now because we're going to be gluing blocks together. So don't waste your time painting the sides you're going to glue. Now, I have seen a lot of trees that are just like the one on the left, where you just have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. But we're going to add to this to make it a little more 3D you saw in the beginning picture. So I'm taking my 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and I'm first gluing them together in sets of 3 or 2. It's just easier to get them all lined up when you do them in smaller batches. Then once those are dry, we will come back and we will put those rows all together. So on the left side here where I'm gluing, you will see starting with 1 on the top, then 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 blocks. Now the extra blocks that you see off to the right, we are going to be using to make our tree three-dimensional. So the row that has 1 at the top is just going to be 1. The row that has 3 is going to have 1 or 2 individual blocks. The row that has 5 is going to have 2 and 2. The row that has 7 is going to have 3 and 3. You can see I'm putting those sets together. The row that has 9 is going to have 2 sets of 4. And you're going to see what we're going to do with these. These are still part of the 66 original blocks. And then our bottom row that has 11, we're going to make 2 sets of 5. These are going to go basically the north and south. If the tree on the left is the east and west, the sets that we're making on the right are going to be the north and south. Trust me, it's all going to make sense. Okay, now we're coming back on the left to our beginner tree. So now we're putting some of those smaller sets together that we had made because I told you it's easier to get them straight. So now we're putting together the set of 5, the set of 7, the set of 9, and also the 2 sets of 4 that go along with that, and then the set of 11, and then the 2 sets of 5 that are going to go on that bottom row of our tree. Once all of this gluing is pretty dry, I'm going to sand lightly, give it a little bit of a distressing. If some of your sets aren't all the way glued together, that's okay. You know, let them sit a little bit more, but still at this point, we have only painted the front and back of each block, not the side edges. Now we're going to glue together our tree there on the left. So I'm putting glue on the bottom of my row of 9, and I'm going to line that up on the row of 11, and then put glue on the bottom of the 7 block row and glue that to the top of the 9, then the 5, then the 3, then the 1. Now while that's drying, we're going to take this chunky circle from Dollar Tree and we are going to paint this on all sides with our dark brown chalk paint called Truffle. This is just going to be a nice big sturdy base for our tree. Next, with those sets of blocks that were over to the right, we are going to put together kind of 2 half trees. So here you can see now I'm going to stack the set of 4 on top of 5, then 3, 2, 1. And this first set, I have them all lining up on the right-hand side. And then the other set, they're all going to be lining up on the left-hand side. So now that set that was all lined up on the right-hand side, we're going to put glue on that edge, and we're going to glue this down to the middle of our base tree that was there. Okay, we're going to just line this up best we can on the middle. You can see a couple of my blocks aren't super straight. That's okay. And just get that lined up as straight as you can and set that aside to dry. Then once that set is dry, you can see we're going to stand that up and we're going to do the same thing with that other piece where they were all lined up on the other side, and we're going to finish our little tree here kind of looking like a tower. I'm not sure, but this one is a little harder to get it lined up in the center for some reason, but get that lined up and then again let it sit so that it is completely dry. And now that we've finished putting our tree together, we can take our fern green paint again and paint any of those exposed edges or sides that need to be painted. Then using some hot glue, I'm going to make basically a plus sign on my base here and glue that tree down, making sure I'm covering up that hole that was in the chunky circle ornament. Now at this point, you can decorate your tree with whatever you'd like. You can use mini garland, you can glue mini ornaments, mini pom-poms, wrap ribbon around it, whatever you'd like. I have had this Jingle Bell I don't know what this is, little wired garland from Dollar Tree in my stash for a little while. So I decided to glue one end to it at the top, and then I am going to wrap it around my tree to give it a little bit more of a rustic look. And I just really wanted to use this, and I didn't want to glue a bunch of individual things on my tree. But again, you can decorate your tumbling tower block Christmas tree with whatever you have on hand or whatever makes you happy. And the last thing I'm going to add to my tree is one of these rusty little stars from Hobby Lobby. I did cut the little ornament hanger off the top, put a bunch of hot glue on the top of the tree and the bottom of the star, hold it in place until it is set, and that is going to be my final decoration on my tumbling tower block Christmas tree. Here's how it turned out. I think it's really, really cute, rustic. You can make this with kids, let them individually paint the blocks. That would take a while. Today we're going to give a Christmas makeover to these recycled jars from spaghetti sauce and I believe gravy. The first thing I'm doing is I am matching up a little wood knob or drawer pull on each of the lids. Now, you may choose to just make over your jars and not even use the lids, but I want to give you some options. So I'm just using a little super glue here, and I'm gluing a little knob to each of the jar lids before I take them out to the garage to spray paint them. Now, I am choosing to use 5 different napkins from my stash. And the first thing I'm going to do is this snowman one. I'm going to cut it in half because I only need one part. Then you're going to want to remove all the other layers to the napkin, whether there's one more or 2 more layers. You just want the front layer of the napkin that has the image printed on it. Now, if you look really closely at your jars, you most likely will see where there is a line or some sort of reference. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting Mod Podge on a little bit at a time. I am going to also use some plastic wrap to help smooth out my napkin without ripping it. So I'm getting that ready. I'm going to start lining up my napkin, try to put some things there to keep it from rolling. And we're going to line this up on the Mod Podge, trying to get it straight on that line. So we're going to press it down a little bit, then put your plastic wrap over so you can try to rub out any bubbles. And I'm going to just keep rolling it and doing maybe 3 inches or so of Mod Podge and then laying down the napkin until we get it all the way around the jar. Now, once you get to the part where it's going to start overlapping, you can choose to cut it. You can choose to go over it. I got mine a little bit wet, and I'm just going to rip it and then kind of try to blend those 2 areas together. Again, coming back with my plastic wrap to try to smooth everything out. Then I'm going to set that aside to dry. Now this one, you can see the underneath layer is pretty plain, and so I'm going to go over it with that last bit of napkin to finish off the tree. And I am going to come around the top here, just kind of dabbing it with my Mod Podge to get that loose napkin to stick to the jar. I am going to be going over the threads of the jar later with some twine. Now this jar, I am going to actually, you probably saw I spray painted all of these to start just to give a base coat. This one I'm just going to do a piece of napkin. So I am going to give this another layer of paint. The spray paint was just kind of a first coat, which was great for all the other jars. But for this one, I wanted a little bit more solid of a coat of paint since there wasn't going to be napkin on all of the jar. I'm just using my white Waverly chalk paint to go over this with one nice coat, and then we'll let that dry. And using the same method as before, I'm now doing a smaller jar with this tall nativity napkin. And don't worry about all that excess napkin. We're going to get rid of that once everything is dry, once the Mod Podge is dry from putting the napkin around the jar. Now this one you can see I trimmed my napkin a little small. So what I'm going to do, I have to remove all this excess at the top anyway. So I'm going to take a piece of this and just cover that little gap with a little bit of the blue napkin. So I'm going to put a little Mod Podge down there, and then I'm going to line up that little piece of napkin, and then we'll trim away the excess. Now, since I only have one square of this bird napkin, I am using just some water on a paintbrush to kind of trace out the part of the napkin that I want to use. This is going to go on that jar that we painted white because we're just going to cover part of the jar with this piece of napkin that we are trimming out. So now we're just going to put a little bit of Mod Podge on the front part of the jar. Over to the right, I'm going to stick down just one half of the bird image, and then we'll stick down the other half. I think this looks really pretty, but I wanted to give you just a couple different alternatives. If you didn't have an entire napkin or didn't want to wrap your entire jar with the napkin, this shows you how you can just take a piece from a napkin and apply it to the front of the jar. Now, once all of our napkins have dried, I'm just going to take my little sander. This is the bottom of the jar here, and just going to sand away the excess of our napkins at the bottom of our jars. Next, using a foam sponge, I am going to take another layer of Mod Podge over the outside of our napkin, kind of pouncing it lightly to seal in our napkin from the outside as well. Once those are dry, I'm going to take some hot glue and some jute twine, and this is optional. I am adding this to cover up the threads of the jar. Now, you can do this if you're going to not use the lids to your jars and just make these decorative jars that you can put flowers in or something like that. If you don't want to cover up the threads, your jar lids will be able to screw on still. I am doing the jute twine so that I have the option, and you can still just set the jar lid on top. So I'm going to just take some twine and I'm going to go around the tops of all 5 of my jars. I'm also going to take a couple little pieces of some Christmas greenery here and just glue these to the jute twine there at the top. 2 little pieces of the greenery and then the little pine cone in the middle. I just thought it went nicely with the image on the napkin. And you can use that without the lid or just set the lid on top, whichever you would prefer. And here are all 5 of my jars. Some of them I added greenery to. One I added a little bow and some jingle bells just to give you some different ideas. I did spray paint all of my lids once I had glued the little knobs on top. Well, thanks so much for joining me for this video. I would love to know, as always, in the comments, which of these projects was your favorite. And here are some other Christmas DIY videos you can watch next. Thanks so much and take care.